Hey guys, thanks for joining us on this special episode, and don't forget to support our Patreon. Just $1 or more will get you early access to all of our content as well as other special features. Enjoy the show! The following is a fan-based video review under fair use. The Last Unicorn is owned by Rankin Productions, TOPCRAFT International, ITC Films, SUNN Classic Pictures, and Peter S. Beagle. Please support the official release and streaming services.
What is it? What do you smell?
DARRYL fresh.
He's here. Spread out the search. Report to the master. We must seek the prize before the meta-human control does.
Damn it! How did I miss Gabler rebuilding his army? I gotta find a way out of here. BGF to OMTV, do you copy? BGF to OMTV, do you copy?
Jack, holy shit, where have you been? We feared the worst.
I had no other choice, Brad. This was the only way to distract the enemy from total takeover.
Where are you at? We'll come grab you.
Negative, I can't tell you. This mission is my own to take. I'm mapping out the route to Unit 205. It's the last known location of Dr. Terawatt's whereabouts. He's the only one who can back up the files and rebuild the FTT to fend off this invasion.
Jack, no one has seen Dr. Terawatt for years. The only sources have been archived and encrypted on his channel for an unknown project called Cal K47. Are you sure he'll be there?
To be honest, I have no idea, Brad. But getting to Unit 205 is our only hope. And because the power cells are unlimited supplies, trekking on foot off-grid is my best option.
Actually, we might have someone who can help with that. I had the boys in the SS Kaikar dig at the old travel logs, but they saw you try to get into contact with an Intel and world WBDCB M8922.
That's the universe codes to...
Yeah, he might be able to use technology to make replicas of the power cells to get where you need to go faster.
The power cells would only be useful for one trip, and there would be our only hope to replicate it.
What other options do you have, man? Given his history with conveniences, I'd take those odds.
I'll give a good thought for a bit. In the meantime, we need to evade these enemy forces. They've already picked up my trail. Send the coordinates to my signal. For now, we need to pass time.
Well, or if you would do the trick.
Good idea. And considering what I'm dealing with right now, I know just the chick flick. I'll access the archival piece.
Wait, did you just say chick?
The hell? Huh. What do you know?
Attention viewers, BigJackFilms is unavailable at the moment due to missing in action. But he has left a recording before his absence for you to enjoy.
Hey guys, what's up? It's BigJackFilms here, and welcome to another review. And once again, we're on another topic on anime. Well, let's be honest, folks. The company Rankin is no stranger to a few episodes here on the show. Beginning in 1960 as VideoCraft International Limited, the majority of Rankin Bass's work is well known for their iconic stop-motion Christmas specials, which was dubbed Animagic by the company as a gimmick to distance themselves from the likes of Dynamation by Ray Harryhausen. Throughout the 1960s, the Animagic productions were headed by Japan, and even some of their projects landed at the dreadful copyright overlords of YouTube at Toei Animation, with some of their earliest artists including one Hayao Miyazaki, who would go on to form Studio Ghibli. But back to Rankin Bass, they also had a hand in its own company of voice actors based here in Toronto, where recording was supervised by veteran CBC actor Bernard Cohen. The Canadian group included actors such as Paul Soles, Larry D. Mann, and Paul Klingman, as well as Paul Frees in several projects. But for us on the channel, Rankin Bass's best work was with, of course, King Kong, with the first animated series by Toei, and the Showa-era Toho flick King Kong Escapes, starring Linda Miller, Akira Takarada, as well as Hiro Nakajima, the original Godzilla suit actor, in the role of Kong. So yeah, there's a lot to admire from Rankin Bass on this channel. However, there's one film under their division that I can consider their magnum opus. And considering it's celebrating its 40th anniversary this year, I figured this month would be a good time to talk about it. So, let's take a look at 1982's The Last Unicorn. Based on the best-selling novel by Peter S. Beagle, this enchanted tale tells of the legends of the mystical unicorns that have since passed into myth upon the land. From hearing that she may be the very last of her kind, one of those beautiful unicorns, voiced by the very talented Mia Farrow, goes in search of others like her from the seclusions of her forest home. Her quest, however, won't be easy, as a butterfly tells the story of a ruthless king and his pet beast known as the Red Bull. And no, it's not meant to give you wings like Pegasus. If anything, it gives you massive heartburn. Hearing the bull might have driven the unicorns to the ends of the earth, she is joined by a set of human companions with Schmendrick, the bumbling magician, voiced by Alan Arkin, and Molly Grew, voiced by Tammy Grimes. However, the journey leads them straight to the evil King Haggard, voiced by the legendary Count Dracula Dooku Saruman himself, Christopher Lee. And is made even more complicated when, to protect her from the envious wrath of Haggard, a spell is cast to turn the unicorn into the Lady Amalthea, a beautiful young human woman. But with this new body comes new thoughts and feelings, such as love for Haggard's son, Prince Lear, voiced by our lovable dude of Kong 76, Jeff Bridges.
Hi, glad to meet you.
Really, Jeff Bridges? That was your best take?
Hi, glad to meet you.
Come on, Jeff Bridges, you're an Academy Award-winning actor. You can do a little better than that.
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like, your opinion, man.
Will Amalthea get lost inside this new body, or will she meet the fate of the other unicorns by the hooves of the dreaded Red Bull? So with all that in just one film, how does it stack up 40 years later? Well, it may come to no surprise that not only is The Last Unicorn my favorite thing Rankin Bass ever did, but it's also one of my favorite animated films of all time, and one of the best fantasy films ever made, especially one from the 80s. And that's mostly how it's aged like a fine bottle of wine, and a hint of Old Toby to spice into it.
Try little old Toby.
This film, for the longest time, was considered an underrated masterpiece, but with the advent of nostalgia and the internet, has become a childhood and animated classic that rivals the qualities of fairy tale stories with the likes of Disney, and is actually a much stronger and darker film that nowadays Disney would never do. My first exposure to the film is kind of a personal one. Back in the 90s, my grandmother was one of the most supportive people in my childhood, and had recorded multiple films for me off television on many VHS tapes, which I still own for sentimental value. And The Last Unicorn is one of the best tapes she recorded for me. I loved the film as a kid, but during my teens, it kinda got lost in memories. However, with the exposure to the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the rise of the internet, and my growing interest in Renaissance fantasies, I went back to it later and grew to appreciate it with every viewing, to become a masterpiece masterpiece in both animation and storytelling, filled with dark themes, incredible visuals, great music to match, and some really engaging dramatic characters with some incredible actors to helm the parts. The first being our title character of the unicorn, who is a beautifully tragic entity. She's a creature who appears to be ages over time, grows and evolves on her quest to develop emotions which unicorns in this world can never express or have. But due to her connections to the humans and eventually falling in love with one of them, when transformed, becomes the only one of her kind later on to be cursed with feelings of regret and everlasting pain that, while the film ends on a happy note, can be symbolized with a sense of tragedy in the vein of Frodo at the end of Return of the King.
I am a little afraid to go home. I have been mortal, and some part of me is mortal yet. I'm no longer like the others. For no unicorn was ever born who could regret, but now I do.
To me, this is Mia Farrow's finest role. I know a lot of people enjoy her work elsewhere, from Rosemary's Baby and even Be Kind Rewind, amongst other films, but much like the unicorn, her career can be somewhat of a tragic one, given she worked with a lot of terrible people, coming out as the strongest piece in those questionable pieces of art. So I hold this role to her highest mettle, given she has voiced her appreciation for her work over time. I met her at Fan Expo a few years ago, in which she signed my DVD copy, and was really flattered how the film's impact left on me as a kid, which is something I will always be grateful for. And despite her role as the unicorn, I love her alter ego role in her human form as Amalthea. The design is equally gorgeous and takes a few risks for what is considered mostly a kid's film. I guess you could say overall, despite me not being much in the way of a fandom that focuses on equestrians, being that this is the closest you'll ever see me as a brony, guys. Say what you want about your Twilight Sparkles, Rainbow Dashes, or Applejacks.
Rainbow Dash. Search the skies for him.
But I'm an old school Amalthea dude. So there you go, bronies. You've officially been acknowledged on my show. Can I go now?
And if the ponies of Equestria went back to hating each other, where are the Wendigos? Such a lightsabers.
Shut up! Oh my god, I don't care! Jesus Christ, dudes! Oh, speaking of dudes. The second best character is one that only shows up about the halfway mark with the awesome down-to-earth Prince Lear. Arguably the most underrated fairy tale prince in animation. The guy comes off as a decently combated fighter, especially when fighting a dragon that sounds an awful lot like Godzilla. Seriously, why the fuck has nobody brought that up in previous reviews? But his character is an open-minded soul who wants to help his people despite the science of his so-called father.
Lear? He's none of mine. I was thinking that I had never been happy and never had a son. It was pleasant enough at first, but it died quickly.
Damn, dude, and I thought Denethor was a terrible father!
That I had died and Boromir had lived.
The best way to describe Lear is what Tim Curry said in Muppet Treasure Island.
You're honest and brave and true.
Now, the guy in some regards can come off as an instant simp to Amalthea, but remember, one of the great powers of a unicorn is their trance of glowing mystical beauty, so as a human form, it's easy to see Lear fall head over heels in love with Amalthea, constantly trying to prove his worth, with great deeds to win this mysterious lady's heart, even down to being frustrated that the prince tropes won't work here.
And then she looked at me, and I was sorry I had killed the thing. Sorry for killing a dragon.
Then perhaps the Lady Amalthea is not to be won by great deeds.
Funny, considering how Disney kinda does that nowadays, so you could consider this one of the first fairy tale films to kinda be self-aware of the cliches and tropes.
Marry the prince and live happily ever after.
Yes, that is my wish.
Though later on, his heroism, courage, and sacrifice does show his qualities in protecting her, with one of the best bits of dialogue in the film.
My lady, I am a hero. And heroes know that things must happen when it is time for them to happen. A quest may not simply be abandoned. Unicorns may go unrescued for a long time, but not forever. A happy ending cannot come in the middle of the story.
On honestly, with such an awesome character, it takes the likes of one of our channel's national treasures, Jeff Bridges, to fit the part perfectly. This is another film, much like King Kong, where he gave it his all, given his love for the material. He actually read the book and instantly fell in love with the words on the page that he practically begged to be in it, no matter what became of the film's marketing, and honestly, it's one of his best performances. And considering his film career at the time coming off King Kong, Starman, and Tron, it gave the film much more star power with the rest of the cast, despite him kind of failing at the end of the movie.
What is the use of wizardry if it cannot even save a unicorn?
That's what heroes are for.
Of course, that is exactly what heroes are for.
Don't worry, I'll save you! I saw! Although, kind of a bummer fact, his character didn't come out too well in the follow-up. Believe it or not, in the sequel book by Beagle titled Two Hearts, King Lear is now an aged lord suffering from forgetfulness after the loss of Amalthea. But considering the injuries he took from the Red Bull, that would probably be a given. I still suck! And after attempting to destroy a griffin, is slain and dies, only seeing the unicorn during his final minutes of life. And knowing that in the context, it gives it and some of these characters so much more weight in the story, and makes it much more of a tragic tale that I would love to see a follow-up to in film. Speaking of, let's talk about the rest of the Fellowship with Schmendrick and Molly, the first being the bumbling magician, who adds a lot of humor to the picture.
The magic chose the shape, not I. I am a bearer. I am a dwelling. I am a messenger.
You are an idiot!
Schmendrick's dream is to become a true magician to the masses. Sure, some might see his ambitions to be more in vein of a mage or wizard, but Schmendrick's strength comes from his ability to limit his desires while also balancing his brandishing ego, creating some great comedy in his dialogue, especially in heated debates with Molly Grew.
And be wary of rousing a wizard's wrath. Rousing a wizard's...
I should laugh myself sick.
Who, by the end of the film, go from butting heads to a decent relationship. Actor Alan Arkin does a marvelous job in the role, and this for me being one of his most iconic. The same can be said for Tammy Grimes as Molly, who has one of the saddest but redeeming arcs in the film, starting off as a girl who has seen a lifetime of hardships and finally unleashing that pain on the unicorn.
Where were you when I was new? When I was one of those innocent young maidens you always come to? How dare you? How dare you come to me now, when I am this?
This scene for much older audiences will hit a lot harder, especially for first-gen fans who saw it in the 80s, and Molly presents much more of an aggressive encouragement for all the characters to keep moving within the quest.
You call Robin Hood, and there is no Robin Hood. You have all the power you need.
You can win! You feel great! You can do this! Oh ha ha!
There's also a ton of great side characters in this movie, with tons of amazing actors lending their voices both good and evil, like the Butterfly, voiced by Robert Klein, speaking in nothing but pass-along tunes.
Buckle down, windsock, buckle down. Oh, I am a cook and a captain bold and the mate of the Nancy brig. See you later, alligator. Has anybody here seen Kelly?
It's charming and cute for kids, but this character can go on a tiny bit long, being almost a prototype love child of the genie from Aladdin and the Na'vi from Legend of Zelda, with a little side order of Alice in Wonderland.
No, listen. Listen, listen quickly. Don't listen to me. Listen. 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 Shut the fuck up!
Other characters, including the likes of the Robin Hood-esque outlaw, Captain Cully, voiced by Keenan Wynn, for which Robin Hood does make a much more magical appearance, making this confusing as fuck of where this takes place in historical preferences, especially if Robin Hood is considered, as Cully puts it,
there is no Robin Hood. Robin Hood is a myth.
Is this supposed to be 1280 during the times of William Wallace? Which makes this thing even more confusing, or— Ah, fuck it, Cully, help me out here.
Have a taco.
What?
Have a taco.
Have a what?
Have a taco.
Okay, fuck it, I guess I'm ordering Taco Bell. Oh, speaking of which, this episode is sponsored by DoorDash. Oh, come on, sponsors! Inflation's through the roof!
Have a taco.
Fun fact, that line got a really funny laugh from the 2011 screening I attended. But outside of the always reliable Paul Frees as the crooked wizard Maverick, there's also the talking drunk skeleton voiced by Bagley! Yep, that's another Kong 76 actor with the late Renee Arbor-Jonas as the skeleton. which, to be fair, he actually is a pretty decent voice actor, later on voicing the chef in The Little Mermaid.
What is this?
There's also the first level boss in the film with Molly Fortuna, voiced by another Disney voice actress, and Mrs. Potts herself, Angela Lansbury. While the character comes off as a Wicked Witch cliché, actually is an iconic villain, given that it takes a while to get to the main two baddies, and for kids becomes a threatening presence in the first act of the story, with a lot of depth to her character, despite being in the film for about 10 minutes tops, as we see her rival destined conflicts with her illusions, and the only real mythical creature she captured with the harpy that becomes her downfall in a pretty gruesome manner.
I held you!
Jesus Christ!
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with Arthur that that's a pretty creepy death for a kid's film. Ooh, speaking of undead creepiness, arguably with a villain like King Haggard, who better to deliver the part than the Legend of Darkness with the iconic Christopher Lee in the title role, and being one of his best in my opinion. He gives the part so much more depth and weight as an old lost soul that is so far gone it's nothing more than pathetic and disturbing, which is a tough set of emotions to balance. But Christopher Lee knocks it out of the park, as we see how Haggard in his dying age is desperately clinging not to power as a king, but as a man seeking some form of long-term happiness before he leaves this world, with his only desire to capture and claim the world's population of the rare and mystical unicorns to the sea of his domain. With his pet beast of the Red Bull there is a somewhat symbolism of a man selling his soul to the devil. And Christopher Lee's delivery is one thing in the film that I'd not want to spoil much and just let you view it for yourself, in whatever language you decide. No, seriously, in every dub of this film, Christopher Lee provided the voice of each one.
Da sind sie, sie gehören mir allein.
Hell, in all his recordings, he actually kept a copy of the book in case they decided to jump off from Peter S. Beagle's literature and do some more scripted banter. So props to Lee for actually respecting the original source material. I want to talk more about this guy's legacy in the future, but needless to say, this is easily one of his best, and worth watching the film for that alone.
Makes no difference. I can wait. The end will be the same. I can wait.
The Red Bull itself is easily a terrifying creature and one of the most intimidating monsters, not just on film, but in the fantasy genre. Most assume the creature took influence from the Balrog of Morgoth from The Lord of the Rings, for which Beagle, the book's author, never intended or was inspired in comparisons despite reading Tolkien's work. But whichever the case, I think it would even give Gandalf a run for his money.
You shall not!
Now, while the cast is enough to attract an audience, it's not the only crowning achievement the film has to offer. One big plus is, of course, in its animation and design. Like I said, being one of Rankin Bass's best for that alone, and it feels like all of their best efforts were put into this film 1000%. The gorgeous painted backgrounds, the character models, the cinematic qualities in its lighting, angles, and shots. This is one of my favorite animated films for a reason, for just how goddamn gorgeous it looks in its visuals. While Rankin Bass is all over this film, the animation was done by Japan's TOPCRAFT animation studio. Hence why I'm reviewing this in anime, because it is technically an anime, and being one of the best in that regard. Which really sucks when doing my research that there is no sign of a Japanese dub of this movie. For God's sakes, even Legend had a Japanese dub. I'm not joking! I need a copy of that dub! Just not having it is just whimpering to torment me. For most American audiences, the animation does look a tad bit familiar to Rankin Bass's earlier films, such as the first film adaptation of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit and The Return of the King, which were both released in between the time of Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings. The mass number of efforts from the artist did a phenomenal job in bringing Beagle's novel to life, and even the author of the book looks back on the film with fond memories. Speaking of, let's talk about the history of the film. The book was published in 1968, and took a few years to write, and was more out of desperation by Beagle himself, to keep his workload up, and was inspired by such works as The White Deer by James Thornton, for which concepts such as Schmendrick turning the unicorn into a woman were taken from. The book, since its publishing, has sold over 5 million copies, making it a decent print and a beloved classic in literature. So much so that Beagle knew a film adaptation could not only be possible, but inevitable. He stated that there had been interest in creating a film based on the book, with the first offer by the creators of the Peanuts specials in the 1970s, though Beagle had been convinced that they were not good enough to produce an adaptation, especially if it was only going to television. While other offers came around from the likes of 20th Century Fox animator Les Goldman, Beagle believed that animation was the only way to go for it at the time in regards to film, and had never thought of making it into a live-action feature. However, as Beagle wrote the screenplay himself to present to studios, Rankin Bass Productions had been the last studio that approached the producers, and Beagle was horrified when he was informed that the producers had struck a deal with them with a budget of just over $6 million. According to Beagle, however, the final film ended up being remarkably close to his original script, and during the production warmed up to them looking over the work from the artists in Japan. The musical score and songs were composed and arranged by music artist Jimmy Webb and performed by the band America, who in no doubt were hired thanks to their 1972 hit Horse with No Name.
I've been to the desert on a horse with no name.
The film's composition was done by, of all things, the London Symphony Orchestra, and given their success on some of the biggest films of all time with Star Wars amongst others, is surprising to see used on what is considered a low-budget production. But shit, it sounds pretty damn good. The use of Jimmy Webb and America providing the songs also gave the film much more staying power in both market and quality. This was at the time when big music artists on the charts were bands made of creative minds inspired by fantasy literature. Going back to Bashki's Lord of the Rings, for example, the director had considered hiring the legendary band Led Zeppelin to do the score, but unfortunately they were so huge they were unaffordable at the time. A shame, since all of their lyrics, believe it or not, were based on or inspired by Tolkien's work. Honestly, if not America, it would have been neat to see Led Zeppelin perform this movie. But America is what we got, and honestly, the work they do is brilliant here, especially with the main theme. I can't really play much of it due to heavy copyright, but it's just a gorgeous piece. But there's a ton of great songs in this movie. Man's Road is a song that sets much more of the mood to the picture. A sense of need to go on a quest with the fears of dangers along the way on the winding paths ahead.
Walking man's road.
There's a slight pause of songs till the second half with the next track, In the Sea, which acts as a long-term transition to see the characters adjust to living in King Haggard's castle. Almost as if they're stuck at a crossroads of where the quest will lead from there. It's a very literal track.
Narwhals lost at sea and never seen again.
Though, the next song has had mixed opinions, depending on which version you listen to, with Now That I'm a Woman, performed by Mia Farrow.
Once I can't remember, I was long ago.
However, on the album, it's performed by Kate Irving.
Once I can't remember, I was long ago.
And to be honest, I have no idea why this decision was made, because I do like both versions of this song. Maybe behind the scenes the filmmakers didn't like Mia singing, and that's a real shame and insult to Farrow herself, because in my opinion, she's a fantastic singer.
Everything is strange.
Kate, however, is also good for the album version. If you were to ask me which one is better, it's an answer I really can't provide. But despite all that, the song is tragic and gorgeous from both singers, providing real empathy for the unicorn for being beyond her years, lost in a new form, and losing the memory of her past life. The final song in the movie is of course the love song, as in any animated movie, with That's All I've Got to Say, performed this time on the album Mia Farrow and Jeff Bridges respectively, whom outside of being an amazing actor, Bridges is a decent music artist on his spare time.
I've had time to write a book about the way you act and look, but I haven't got a paragraph.
Seriously, he spent a lot of his career writing some awesome songs. Don't believe me? Check out the movie Crazy Heart, he really shines there. The song, for the most part, is your typical love ballad, but with Bridges' genuine voice and writing by America, it brings together Prince Lear's side quest in writing poetry for the Lady Amalthea and eventually winning the lost soul over. Honestly, it's a beautiful piece that brings these two lonely beings together in an almost destined union.
That's all I've got to say.
But outside of the songs, the score itself is brilliant with several instrumental themes for the characters, mostly in the villains, and can be enjoyed on its own. For example, listen to King Haggard's theme. Okay, with that castle and the tone itself, why does it look like No Heart's gonna show up at some point? The soundtrack was recorded at Delane Leah Studios in Wemby, England in 1982, being released in Germany in 1983 on vinyl by Virgin Records. However, it's not been released in North America for some stupid reason. However, you can find the soundtrack easily on YouTube. The theme song, however, was featured on the 1997 compilation album The Best of America, which is somewhat more easily available. Now, with all that said, with the cast, the animation, and the music being utter masterpieces in their own right, is there anything that doesn't work? Quite frankly, I should not be asking that. Well, there's not much in the storyline that I can really hate because the plot is pretty damn perfect. However, it can be noted that the film is not only Rankin Bass's best film, but it's also the darkest and more mature of their animated pieces. From its tragic themes, emotional characters, and dramatic outcomes, given it's an 80s fantasy movie, it has a lot of stuff which nowadays is a no-no in kids' movies. While not much in the way of blood or extreme violence, the film does have some mild swearing which was actually cut from the E1 DVD release.
Where have you been? Damn you! Where have you been? Where have you been? Where have you been?
But it also, surprisingly enough, has some mild nudity and sexual undertones. Like the purple tree with tits. That's just awkward.
Oh god, I'm engaged to a Douglas fir.
Huh, I guess these were the Entwives Treebeard was always barking about.
Always faithfulness beyond any man's deserving.
Kiss my bark.
I knew you were the last!
This scene is just really odd and comes right the fuck out of nowhere. Seriously, what in the fun fruit fuck trees is this? You think this thing is gonna grab Schmendrick and take him to town in a hentai? It's like the love child of the Vine scene in Evil Dead, crossed with the giant zombie mob from Brain Dead.
No one will ever love you like your mother.
But outside of that, when the unicorn transforms, we see her human body in a few risque shots. Sure, she's covered up for the most part, but you don't see this kind of shit in any other kids' movies, especially outside of the 80s. Even Lear just straight up judges the situation.
The young girl, she looks so strange. She has a newness.
Is that why you're so fixated on her, man? What the fuck?
We all know who is at fault here. What the fuck are you talking about?
I mean, what do you expect when Peter S. Beagle is friends with Game of Thrones creator George R.R. Martin? No, seriously, the two are best buddies and actually have an alternate story that connects The Last Unicorn with Game of Thrones. When King Haggard is defeated, spoiler alert, the Red Bull saves him from drowning and they travel to Westeros and in Game of Thrones fashion, kill everyone. Daenerys, Jon, Tyrion, Arya, the White Walkers, the dragons, everyone is dead. King Haggard sits on the Iron Throne ruling the land, and in Haggard's fashion,
they are nothing to me. I have known them all, and they have not made me happy.
It's a little fun story that both Peter S. Beagle and George R. R. Martin play around with, and even have fan art dedicated to the storyline.
But what if there isn't a happy ending at all?
But those are just nitpicks that I can honestly let pass. The film is a masterpiece of fantasy and animation regardless. Though less can be said about the film's release and how Peter S. Beagle got completely screwed over. It's a bit tricky to put together, but it's a bit of a tragic tale on par with the film itself. The movie had a very hit or miss reception at the box office depending on where it was in the world. Some areas it flopped, others it was mediocre, but in some countries, it did sensational. Hell, in one of them, it outgrossed The Empire Strikes Back at the box office. Yeah, that means more people went to see this movie more than one of the greatest sequels, let alone Star Wars movies of all time. Unfortunately for Beagle, he didn't get a cent for decades. Even on home video, the poor guy didn't make any profits on his adaptive creation. This was due to legal contract reasons and shady evasions of getting the rights back, and it got to the point where Beagle finally had enough come DVD where he felt he deserved a cut, calling out the current holders and finally making back decades of losses with a few tours of the movie screening in theaters, one of which I actually did attend in 2011. It's no wonder that unlike many incarnations of Tolkien and C.S. Lewis's work, that another adaptation has yet to be made. But funny thing about that, a live-action remake adaptation of the book has been in the works for almost 20 years since the success of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy and the rise of the fantasy genre in the 2000s. During that time, a website has been campaigning to get it off the ground and for a studio to take up the adaptation, and even a cast had been listed. However, this campaign was founded by one of the rights holders since the original film and has been labeled as kind of insane.
He's mad.
In 2015, Beagle filed a lawsuit for rights abuse against the holders and finally got control of his creation back with a live-action adaptation open to offers for major studios. Beagle also had shown interest in putting things from the book that were not in the animated film, from Haggard and Lear's backstories, along with adapting the follow-ups to the original story as a potential sequel. And to be honest, the story has great potential to be on par with Hollywood works such as the Narnia films. It's really hard to know if this will ever happen given it's been in development hell, and my intrigue will really start to come into play once the cameras roll. The same thing is something I did on Jurassic World, which took a decade to put together. But no matter whatever comes of a later adaptation of Beagle's written masterpiece, I personally don't think it will ever match the utter love I have for the original animated classic. Overall, The Last Unicorn still stands the test of time 40 years later and is one of my favorite movies of all time as a childhood classic and a creative, imaginative fairy tale. Much like Ridley Scott's Legend, it's a beautiful piece of visual storytelling in its gorgeous animation, outstanding acted cast, fantastic Renaissance music, and a tragic story of fate, destiny, and regret. It might be a bit more depressing in its outcome, but it leaves you with a sense of hope and an overall romantic adventure, and unlike An American Tail, which is a tad more depressing but with a happy ending, this one leaves a bit more impact power, coming in, of course, at the highest regard of a 10 out of 10. I'd highly recommend the recent Blu-ray release by the company crush I have for Shout Factory, because the film, much like Kong 76,
Who are you?
I am Jack Prescott.
Has never looked better, and I'm so thankful to have seen it on the big screen with friends, a packed crowd, and Peter S. Beagle himself. And it's one of my favorite movies for those reasons alone, and is easily one of the best fantasy films of the 1980s. And that's all I've got to say about The Last Unicorn. It really is Rankin Bass's magnum opus, and I would highly recommend it. But of course, let me know your thoughts on the film and or the book in the comment section below. Did you grow up with the film, or have you never watched it, which... Why the fuck are you watching this video? Go watch it, it's freaking awesome! So until the next video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. This is BigJackFilms, signing off for now.
Don't let him get away this time!
Brad! You got the coordinates, over!
Send them now, Jack. You got one shot at this. Don't fuck it up. You, I'm sending back up regardless.
You're an idiot, Brad! But noble!
What are you doing, you maggots? Shoot the beast! The master sees such a prize!
The master will not harm such beauty so long as I stand with her. Leave now or face my blade. That's the second time you saved my life, Amalthea.
And unlike me, it will not be the last, Aryan.
It's good to see you, old friend.
They are coming. Wherever the road may take you, you must make haste.
They're in even greater danger if they hunt you. Seek the path out of this world by your own power. Ride to the east. There's a priestess there. You should meet her.
Who is this spirit?
She was once the protector of a long-destroyed relic. The presence of my heart is where her true protection will follow you. Alright, Brad. Keep track. I'm going in.
What was the holdup? Did they find you?
No. But someone did. A friend. Good luck to you, my friend. For you are the last.